Morning, lads and lasses. Hope you're all doing fantastically well. It is Conor here. We're back with a little bit of a roundup going into the final furlong, the final hurdle, the final 8 games. My goodness, how are we all going to cope with it mentally? I don't know. My anxiety is already at 14 out of 10. But what is going on in your world? Let me know in the comment section below. If you haven't checked out the content of the last couple of days, make sure you do so. Today, we're going to be speaking about a little fantastic number 10, an Italian number 10 who has had an injury and what Leeds United can do about it. Willy Gnonto limped off after Italy's performance last night after 45 minutes. And look, Willy Gnonto doesn't normally go down, I don't feel. I think a lot of the time, look, when he's been hit in a football match, he'll go down in maybe a little bit of gamesmanship, stay down a little bit longer if Leeds are winning. Maybe get as a free kick. The dark arts are normally in full force with Willy Gnonto, and he's fantastic in that regard, shielding the ball. He's only a small little lad, so he's getting hit quite a lot in football games, but he's not been playing that many minutes, has he, over the course of the season, really, when you look at it in sort of, how much minutes Willy Gnonto, from his standards, he believes that he should be playing, really. So going into this Italian under-21s game, it was quite interesting because I was kind of thinking to myself beforehand, he's not really had that much match fitness, and match fitness is just so important in football, getting that 45, 60, 75, 90 minutes under your belt and being able to carry that on into the second, third, fourth fixture. It's absolutely huge in football. We all know that. We're all well aware. But he went off yesterday after 45 minutes with what is said to have been a muscular injury. So I guess right now we're kind of planning for the worst in a sense when it comes to Willy Gnonto, and the worst hopefully will be, worst case scenario, he misses Swansea and he's fine for the other games. But you're kind of looking at it right now. Apparently, he's going back to Leeds. Rumours are saying to be assessed. So yeah, it's 15 players out on international duty. We were talking about this not long ago. Maybe a couple of them are going to come back with niggles, with a few injuries, but some of them might come back with the flu, whatever, fatigue, jet lag. You look at Altanaka, who's probably going to be back in the UK for 13, 14 hours before us actually playing against Swansea. Junior Firpo, it looks like he's not going to be playing the second game for the Dominican Republic, but has travelled over 1,000 miles. So these are all sort of little bits and bats of which we're maybe not taken into consideration. We talk about how fantastic it is for our players not to be to be featuring on the international stage. What we don't talk about is the arduous travel that comes with that. The positives that we saw, Joseph getting another goal for the Spanish under-21s, and we also saw Isaac Schmidt get rave reviews for his performance on the international stage, which once again, we're talking about rotation, we're talking about minutes, maybe Sam Byram getting more minutes ahead of Isaac Schmidt, of which we've seen Schmidt play, and we think, wow, technically he looks lovely on the ball, and maybe he should have got a few more minutes this season as well. So Joseph, once again, we're talking about this as if it's going around the houses. Joseph, we've all had conversation about him maybe having minutes, not doing the right thing, but it was another lovely finish from him last night. On the other side, not a typical Joseph goal, but he fired the ball in and got the 21s another goal, which was fantastic to see. So Schmidt as well contributing heavily without many minutes is normally a really, really good sign, because it just means that his adaptability, his frequency, he's able to dial that up and get to that level really quickly without minutes, which we saw with Willy Gnonto at the weekend. There's some Leeds players over the years, Calvin Phillips, I remember being one of them, where you had to get really they had to get 90 minutes for that fifth game for them to be right back into it. Luke Ayling was a real classic example of Luke being able to come and be at that standard. But I do think now, if Gnonto is to miss the Swansea game, worst case scenario, I think Brendan Harrison starts for Leeds United till the end of the season. I think that will happen. So that's a conversation to be had. At least we kind of will see Rothwell in that centre stage, but you have got to look at Ramazani maybe replacing Dan James for a part of it, James going away and James playing again and again. It's one of those where how fatigued is he going to be? So, but the rotation is there. We do have players in and around that squad who can mix and who can really deliver. And it is good to see the likes of Joseph and Schmidt go away with their international teams and still perform, even with the lack of minutes, even with the rustiness that they'll be feeling, the lack of match fitness, they'll be able to come back in and probably do a job for Leeds United if needed. We sometimes know that Isaac Schmidt has been classified as a winger by many. So, considerations, definitely. A little bit of nerves creeping in now, and I think the nerves will definitely be creeping in for that Swansea game. She kind of thought Leeds had gone up a gear For me, ideal situation right now, I still would see the likes of Mano Solomon in that number 10 and Ramazani maybe on that left-hand side, potentially. Look, you've kind of got Dan James on that right, haven't you? This is all if Gnonto's injured, but you can then go Joel Peru in the 10. You can go Matteo Joseph up top. There are a lot of options right now still, even with the injuries that we've got, and that's because of the squad building of the 49ers that has been pretty decent for us. But best case scenario, he's back for the Swansea game and he starts. But it's been an interesting international period already for Leeds United. So what would you do, guys? Worst case scenario, best case scenario? Let me know in the comment section below. See you in a bit. Cheers.